Guys, burnout in business is no joke. A lot of people like to pretend that burnout doesn't exist, but it really does. Even if you're succeeding at business and everything is going well, there'll be points where you feel unmotivated and simply not up to the workload. And I want to talk about why this is and ultimately what you guys can do to minimize the effects of this and to ultimately stop this from happening. First, let's talk about what brought about the topic of this video. Just yesterday, I was sat at my computer about 12 midnight. I was sat there uploading more and more items into my different shops. As you guys will now know, I sell on 6 different channels, and after I'd done about 4 or 5 listings, and bear in mind, I am kind of a night owl at the minute. I like to do all of my listings from between, let's say, 9 PM and 1 AM. Once I was about 3 or 4 listings in, because I only started at, say, 10 to 12 for some reason, I realised I was not in the mood for this, and it was more than just not wanting to do it. It was a simple lack of motivation. Now, it took me a minute to realise why this is, and it became very clear. In the past week, I've been listing 40 items a day into my shops, and this is not anything new. Before that, I was listing 15 items a day, and I've been doing this for about probably 5 months now. That's a lot of items. Right now, in my eBay shop alone, I have over 300 listings, and bear in mind, that's only one of my different sales channels. The truth is, it's a lot to manage, and I'm sure a lot of you new business owners will be out there feeling the same. We know where our business is headed, and we can see the success that we're having. We know that we're on the right path, and that's really motivating. So in my experience, whenever I've felt like this, it's mainly due to too much work being done in too short of a period of time with no real strategy behind it. Let me explain. So listing 40 items a day isn't necessarily a problem, and it is something that I have been managing for weeks and weeks and weeks. Where did I go wrong though? I think it's the way that I split it up and the intentions that I had behind it. I had to make sure, or I wanted to make sure, that my 40 listings were done in 3 to 4 hours. That's on all these different platforms, and that is okay, right? Many people in business want to get their work done as quick as possible, and generally speaking, I am one of them. However, especially on days when I don't have much to do, that adds an unnecessary element of stress. I've decided now that what I'm going to do is start doing 10 listings at a time, and then sit down for a bit or do something else that I want to do. You don't necessarily have to focus all that time at once into one specific task. After all, one of the privileges of owning a business and making an income for yourself is that you've got more of a choice as to what you do, and you have more freedom around your lifestyle. And I think that's what a lot of business owners need to remember. We see that our business is starting to take off. We see the sales coming in, we see more orders coming in, we see more customers, and ultimately that leads us to put in 150%. The problem with this is though, it often leads to us doing way more work than we in theory need to do, and it may not even be beneficial for us in the short term. We're just nitpicking over every single detail, and we do this for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, because we know that if the business has made 500 sales this week, it might make 1,000 sales this time next month, and we know that that's a path that we want to be on. Despite that though, this leads to people putting in way too much time, way too much drive, and expecting unrealistic results, and I think that's what a lot of you guys will be able to relate to, and it is ultimately where I am. Remember, just a couple of months ago, I was making £0 from any shops online. Now I've gotten to a point where my 90-day total on eBay is nearing £20,000. That's a possible £60,000 this year. The reason why that was disappointing for me though is, in the past week or two, my sales have dropped to a point where I'm now making between £100 a day and say £500 a day at the high end. Previously, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was making like a minimum of £500. So this is a thing. The vision kind of gets clouded, because there's nothing really wrong with making, £100 a day of revenue for a business of your own. However, when you look at this on the macro level, it seems like a minuscule amount when you think that platforms like Amazon make billions every single year. That's not the point though. We need to keep focused on the task in hand, and if we don't do this, we have the potential to burn out, in my opinion, because it leads to us doing unnecessary amounts of stressful tasks and putting ourselves in positions that we simply do not require to be in. Now, most of the time when you look up definitions for what burnout is, it often relates to people being unsatisfied in their job and not feeling like there's anywhere they can go for growth. When you're running a business though, you know there's somewhere to go for growth, and you probably aren't dissatisfied. But I think what it leads to is dissatisfaction by over perfection. If you're out there running a business for yourself, you're already somebody out there who expects a lot better for yourself than most people do for themselves. So you're naturally going to be more ambitious. You're naturally going to expect more and more from yourself, but this can lead to disappointment with happy tasks. And instead of celebrating, like I should be, at the fact of making over £100 a day in revenue, you then become miserable because it doesn't seem like where you should be. And that leads to you putting more and more and more time in, ultimately stressing yourself out in goals that you should be happy with. So how do you deal with going about this? I think it's important to keep a track of where you actually are. That's one of the reasons why I made this here YouTube channel. I want to keep a documentation of how I feel with my business, of how my business is growing, and of what I'm learning. I need to say, looking back, it is a humble reminder. Just a couple of months ago, I was happy to be making 60 sales a month. Now, if I'm making 200, it doesn't seem like enough, and that's really not on. It's something that I need to work on mentally. I also think it is extremely important to know how much you are working. If you're putting in, say, 100 hours a week into this business, and that might sound like a lot, but it's not unrealistic, some people do that, is that really worth your time? Like, especially when I look at my processes, and when I did this a couple of weeks ago, I realized I might be putting in, say, 7 hours a day, but a lot of that was just redundant time that I was wasting doing something that I just didn't need to do. I found a way to make everything more efficient, and that way I could fit more in less time. But even if your processes are perfect, are you working flat out 7 days a week, 365 days a year? And is that something that you can comfortably sustain, and do you know that you can do that? If you don't think it's something that you can do, that's not a problem, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't run a business. It just means that you understand your limitations, and it may mean that you need 1 day a month, 1 day a week to take some time to detox, to de-stress. You work really hard, so why not acknowledge that and take that time to kind of just chill out now and again? So if we're being honest, feeling burnt out in a business is something that I think we are all going to feel at some point, especially in the early days, because we know that we're putting in all of our effort and we might not necessarily be seeing the results that we want. And even if we are seeing the results that we wanted a couple months ago, now the goalposts have changed and now we want even more from our business. So I think it's really important to note where we've come, where we're going, and how things look. By keeping some time for yourself, by taking some time to do what you want alongside the business, you'll be a happier person overall, which will allow you to give more back to your business. So in my case, whilst I'm still happy to list 40 listings a day, I've decided I'm going to take maybe 1 or 2 days a week where I'm only going to list between, let's say, 3 and 15 listings. That's a comfortable amount. I can do that, say, 3 listings at a time. It's going to take me like 50 minutes each time. That's barely any work at all. That's where I was 3 months ago. I didn't feel any stress there at all. Now though, it feels like there is that pressure, and that's okay in work days. But when every day's work, when every day feels like a challenge, like a chore, that's kind of where things cross the line of being acceptable consistently for most people, because most people will then become demotivated and probably give up. And it's important that you're not one of these people. We've all heard the statistics out there. Most businesses fail, whether it be like 90%, 95%. The question is, how do you make sure you're not one of these people? I think a lot of it is less to do with the business that you run and more to do with the mindset that you have. Do not give up on the hurdles, but acknowledge them and acknowledge that you can defeat the hurdles, you can pass them, and you can move on to the next level. But to do that, it often takes the acknowledgement of a problem in the first place. So make sure you are controlling how much you work and how you feel about your work. I hope that this video was useful to somebody out there. As much as it is for you guys, it is for me to look back on, and hopefully this will seem like just a minor blip in the process of building a sustainable business. Thank you for watching till the end, and I hope to see you again soon.